So when you look at people of color, you might be looking at some very maladaptive, traumatized people who don't necessarily know that they're traumatized, but simply are just adjusting to an alien climate that really has not really embraced them with love and approval and acceptance and even the ability to truly get through life uninhibited without any external forces attempting to attack them. Toxic shame. We've talked about this before quite a few times, but this is when you see yourself not as I did a bad behavior, but that I am a bad person. Now, earlier I talked about how mother is our first God. We don't know any other gods until we're taught later on in life. So because of that, we identify and we take so much of mother's opinions, thought processes, and even just watching her behavior and mimicking it unconsciously. So we're going to put a lot of weight a lot of times on what our mother has to say about us. She tells you or criticizes you constantly, or if she is not able to handle her emotions in a positive, healthy way, and she tends to unload or lash out on you, you could come to see yourself. The image that you see of yourself is not that you did a bad thing that made mommy mad or a bad thing that is sometimes not okay and you had to be disciplined for it. You come to see your own self as bad. You come to internalize who you are as bad. And because you internalize and see yourself as bad, you're dealing with toxic shame. You're dealing with a twisted self-image and a twisted narrative of who you truly are, which keeps you from connecting to the divine. You self-neglect and self-sacrifice to keep things peaceful. You have very weak boundaries. People cross your boundaries and you're like, oh, well, okay, that's okay. I'm sure they didn't mean it, or I'm sure they didn't mean that by it. Or you do things when you know you're tired. You say yes when you should say no. You overextend yourself. You're codependent. You depend on other people's opinions to pad your self-esteem. Because somewhere along the line, and many of us have learned, oh, be humble, be humble, be humble. Giving other people the power to tell you who you are, what you are, and if you are good enough is a recipe for disaster. You spend a lot of your time trying to make yourself into a person who's going to get that kind of approval instead of understanding how to create that approval within yourself. Okay. And all things that come with that is being a caretaker and a fixer. All right. And these are all things that we can come to truly. These are all behaviors that we can engage in when we are not dealing with our nurturing in a healtly way. As you come to nurture, you can be understanding of other people's issues, problems, hang-ups, struggles. You can be very cognizant of that. But where it is out of balance is when you start to do things to abuse and torment yourself in service of others. You have to serve them so badly. You need them to get through whatever they're going through so badly that you have now taken it on and made it your priority to fix and heal them. Now, while you may in the background have an agenda, okay, because nobody's walking around here completely altruistic. You may have an agenda thinking that if you put yourself out there and you take all these hits, that eventually people will start to value you and see you and care for you. And that is another proponent of the mother wound. Oftentimes when our mothers can't see us because we so desperately want their approval, we take whatever they throw at us. We begin to believe that abuse and love can coexist in the same places. Okay. We begin to believe that people can mistreat us and also love us at the same time. So when you are dealing with having never gotten your mother's approval, or feeling like you're only can be loved by her if you are doing certain things right, or it feels really, really conditional for her to embrace you, then you begin to believe that if you suffer through certain things, then other people will give you a prize. There will be a prize at the end of the road. And I think that that is just a pattern that tends to be repetitively and inaccurately ruminating and cycling in our head over and over again. Unhealedness will make you work hard for peanuts, and when you get the peanuts, you'll be happy like you won the lottery. So how do we heal this mother wound, this pervasive thing? The first thing I want to be very clear about is you have to forgive your mother. Now, I know that this sounds super cliche, but the point is that this is an energetic universe. You have to release the energy of resentment that you hold for her. The resentment is not letting her off the hook. It's letting you off the hook. You also have to take her off of this omnipotent pedestal that you put her on. And I know that our mothers mean a lot to us, but seeing our mothers as human does not mean that we are taking the glow off of them, the shine off of them. It means that we're giving them the right amount of regard. So even if you are holding your mother in a very high regard, you're not allowing yourself to find your own voice. The only voice you hear in your head is how she has molded, groomed, and shaped you to be. And you are more than what just one person can do. Okay? You have a voice, and you should hear that voice louder and not be guided by the need to please your mother your entire life. You hold her in too low of a regard, then you're not allowing yourself to be freed up, and the energy of resentment is being held in you. And that is also holding you back. Maybe she didn't have the greatest character and you had to sever ties, but that's not your fault. Maybe she let you down in specific areas, but it's still not your fault. For some reason, and child psychologists have talked about this, when children see things happen and their mothers are frustrated, or there's constantly a lot of stress and a tense environment, children tend to blame themselves. Maybe if I clean up faster, or maybe if I do this, or maybe if I do that, or they resented and they're like, oh, I can't ever do anything right. Children tend to blame themselves for the behaviors of their parents because they don't know how to react in any other way, because they haven't developed the coping skills. The unfortunate part is that this particular mind virus, unchecked, turns into a full-blown trauma that stays with that person, and they operate from that trauma subconsciously in their adulthood just because it went unchecked. Other thing is, you don't look for her to change now. There's some small part of you that carries hope, that she will see you, she will hear you, she will embrace you, she will become more loving, she will become more affectionate, or whatever it is that you felt you didn't get from her as a child. You have to release yourself from trying to see her change, because even when you are doing this, you have to constantly remind yourself that you are doing this for you and you're not doing this for her. This is for you to open up the pathway to hear your own voice and be empowered by who you are and strong in your identity. You need to release yourself from how she feels. Now, this is one that will cause friction, and especially with a black mama. But this is one that will cause friction. If your parent is used to you interacting with you a certain way, speaking to you in a certain way, not respecting your boundaries, and then you begin to develop healthy boundaries, a healthy system, saying no more, putting your needs at the same rate as hers, there could be some friction. They could believe that you're acting funny, or that you're not being a good child, or they could guilt trip you because they've already programmed you to have weak boundaries. So when you start to set boundaries, that is going to be a problem for them. And depending on the type of mother you have, she may or may not. She may punish you in some way for that. And you have to get to the point where you are prepared for that internally. Okay. It's going to be an uncomfortable road at first because you're going to have to stop leaning into everyone else's sob story and make sure that you are given from a surplus and not a deficit, which means that during that time frame, there's going to be some loneliness. There's going to be some uncertainty. There's going to be some feelings of hurt and feelings of sadness that overcome you. And you're going to have to feel it all the way through, which may or may not be something that you're looking forward to doing. But as you get through this, as you develop healthier coping skills, you will come out victorious. But the transition is always shitty, people. If you think you're going to get through the transition and it not be shitty, you're wrong. You're just going to have to muster through this because these are things that have not been taken care of since you were a child. Okay? You also have to start to let other people deal with their own emotional discomfort. Stop trying to save them from themselves. If they are dealing with emotions and things that make them uncomfortable because now you're setting boundaries. Now hey, you know what? I hear you got a problem. I understand, but right now I'm not in the right place. So I'm going to have to talk to you later. You're not running to everyone's rescue. You're not trying to over nurture. You're not trying to over care about everybody's problems. That kind of thing can cause a shift in the people that you have in your life. And it can cause some difficulties between the people that are currently in your life because they're not used to the healthier version of you. They're used to the overgiver, the person that they can walk all over, the doormat. They like that. Many people like that because unfortunately, many people are dealing with varying levels of codependency within themselves. But when you start to make these shifts, yes, some people will get angry. They will get upset. They will have uncomfortable emotions. They will react poorly to it. And you have to leave them to deal with their own uncomfortable emotions. That is their responsibility. Okay? So you have to start valuing your needs at an equal rate to others. And yes, these are all uncomfortable things where people are going to have reactions, where people are going to give you negative feedback. But what you're going to have to say is fuck it. Let them deal with their emotions, deal with your own uncomfortable emotions, and rebuild on the inside of you so that your inner voice reflects worthiness, value of self, and proper, healthy, healing coping mechanisms. Okay? So this is Twilight saying peace, healing, love yourself. Everything was rigged.